Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. It's safe to say that Reginald Hudlin fucked up Milestone 2.0. Now, many black comic fans were looking forward to seeing a relaunch of the Milestone characters in the 21st century. Unfortunately, because Reginald Hudlin was put in charge of the Milestone universe, he basically built a world that wound up falling completely apart. Now, the Milestone characters were characters that were very popular with black comic fans for many years. Unfortunately, when the time came to launch Milestone 2.0, because Reginald Hudlin, a filmmaker, was put in charge of the relaunch of Milestone, this basically led to this whole new world of Milestone characters crashing and burning. Now, when it comes to comics, you really need a publishing professional to be put in charge of launching a brand. Unfortunately, over at Warner Brothers Discovery, they still have the same idea that they think they can get somebody who is not a publisher to work in publishing, not seeing the disaster that Dan Didio did almost 20 years ago when he took over DC Comics. And sadly, they wound up making the same mistake by putting Reginald Hudlin in charge of the Milestone 2.0 relaunch. Now, with Reginald Hudlin, what Warner Brothers Discovery was thinking, they were going to get a filmmaker to come in and be able to synergize adaptations of characters like Hardware, Icon, Static, The Blood Syndicate, and The Shadow Cabinet. Unfortunately, they put the cart before the horse, because in order to get those adaptations and have really solid adaptations that would synergize so that the comics could go out here and sell the films and other merchandise, what Warner Brothers Discovery needed was a publishing professional with experience to be able to set the course for the Milestone 2.0 relaunch. Because when it comes to publishing, it's the foundation for all of the other adaptations and other licensing and merchandising, and you need a publishing professional with years of experience to be able to set a course for your whole brand so that everything can flow effortlessly. Unfortunately, Reginald Hudlin came into Milestone 2.0 with that filmmaker background, and even worse, came into Milestone 2.0 with an emotional viewpoint of a comic fan and not the objective viewpoint of a professional publisher like myself. Now, there's a big difference between being a comic fan and a publisher, and this was shown as related to legendary comic book editor Jim Shooter, who understood the business of publishing, and that's what Reginald Hudlin lacked, an understanding of the business of publishing. And because he didn't understand the business of publishing, what he did was go out here and do a relaunch based on emotion and not based on a critical analysis of the source material in an effort to make it fresh for the next generation. And because Reginald Hudlin came from an emotional perspective, what he did was go out and launch Milestone 2.0, focusing it on current events rather than studying the source material and making things a bit more contemporary for modern readers. Now, a successful relaunch was the Crisis of Infinite Earths after the post-crisis, where many of the old DC characters like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman got brand new contemporary origins that allowed modern characters to access these characters, and that should have been the template that Reginald should have used for the relaunch of Milestone 2.0. Now, Milestone 2.0 could have been a success had they just did basic general stories that basically reintroduced readers to the characters, reintroduced character to us to their missions, and persuaded us to care about these characters so that they could resonate with readers. Unfortunately, the entire Milestone universe wound up getting completely derailed because Reginald Hudlin got caught up in identity, politics, and social justice, and decided to tie the major event that laid the foundation for the Milestone universe, the Big Bang, and tie it into the social justice of what was going on in the 2020 riots that came after the death of George Floyd. And that decision to tie it into the protest of Black Lives Matter basically led to the complete collapse of the entire Milestone 2.0 universe, led to the complete collapse because over time, people started to look into Black Lives Matter as an organization and found out that that so-called nonprofit basically was looking to finesse and con people. And this basically destroyed the overall credibility of the Milestone universe because with the Big Bang tied to the Black Lives Matter riots of 2020, what this did was destroy the entire credibility for the entire Milestone universe and basically destroyed the overall structure of the Milestone universe because with the Big Bang being the foundation for everything, that whole event of these people who were a part of Black Lives Matter being exposed as frauds destroyed the entire foundation of the entire Milestone universe. 2.0. Now, in addition to destroying the Milestone universe's 2.0's foundation by creating the origins of related to Black Lives Matter as related to characters like Static and the Blood Syndicate, Reginald didn't also understand the structures of many of the characters' source material, and he didn't understand the story models for those characters. For example, with the characters of Icon and Rocket, he really didn't understand that the relationship between Raquel and Augustus was the core of that book. And as he didn't understand that Raquel and Augustus' relationship was important and core to the book because it was all about both of them learning from each other. It was all about Raquel learning about the past as related to slavery from Augustus's experiences during slavery, and Augustus reconnecting with the world as related to Raquel, showing him the world. He instead decided to go in a different direction with Icon, and that direction really didn't work very well because what he wanted to do was shoehorn his characters and his, as related to the love group or whatever they were called, wanted to shoehorn them in, and that really disrupted the organic flow of the Milestone universe because the relationship between Augustus and Raquel was core to those characters, and basically it just destroyed the entire dynamic of the book as he tried to put these love characters in there, but these love characters really just needed their own book. They needed their own book to have their origin and have their mission. And as he went with the Icon character trying to change the dynamics, he gave us two extremely uninspired costumes, then went on to show Icon being sort of like a version of Superman, which really was a mistake because what made Icon work is that he is not Superman, that he's learning about life as related to this world and studying this world, and putting all of these things, having Icon with a underwater fortress of solitude and other crazy ideas, really flies in the face of Black history, which was another core component of what made Icon work, that he was really as an alien trying to maintain his cover, not looking to do things like sort of like what they said with Star Trek as related to the Prime Directive, where you're not looking to interfere with that culture, because giving Icon all of this tech that's all out here and not having him hide his ship basically would fly in the face of things like World War II, Jim Crow, and other issues. I mean, when I was writing ISIS Imitation of Life, I'm trying to show how ISIS was trying to avoid getting involved with political affairs, even though she was a goddess, because she understood the ramifications that would happen to other Black people. And she also had to deal with the elder gods like Ra telling her not to interfere. But with Icon, we've got all of this stuff in as related to Hudlin's adaptation that just doesn't work. and that basically did damage to Icon as a character overall as related to Milestone 2.0. I mean, he was trying to interject ideas that really didn't fit there organically and should have studied the run more objectively. And I look at this at Icon 2.0, and again, big disaster overall. But not as bad as Static 2.0, which was the worst of all of the relaunches. Now, Static was set up to become Milestone 2.0's flagship character, but he was done in by a very clunky and cumbersome origin story that was more fit for the CW TV things, and even worse, had an inept writer in Vita Ayala writing the story. Now, I would think, again, if you had a flagship character, you would want to go out here and get a qualified individual to go work on a character like Static. I would think you would want to go get a skilled writer who understood life as a teenager and would want to go out here and give you a picture of life in high school and show you a teenager again and do this origin in less than maybe 2 issues. I would think you would want to do that, but he went out here and hired Vita Ayala, a grossly unqualified female writer who didn't understand anything about black men, black manhood, or black masculinity the way the late great Dwayne McDuffie understood black manhood, black masculinity, and character traits of black men. And as a result, what we got was a clunky, cumbersome origin story fit for the CW, with Virgil looking effeminate and not really the character that we got from the late great Dwayne McDuffie in Static Comics or Static Shock, that basically was like a Spider-Man style story. Instead of us getting that story, we got this just cumbersome mess with his parents figuring out his identity and other things that basically threw off the dynamics. I mean, Milestone 2.0 Static was again one of the great tragedies of modern comics, because here was an opportunity to basically get a 6-figure sale in comics, but because they got an inexperienced writer who just didn't understand life and didn't understand life dynamics or relationship dynamics, what we got was a big-time disaster that just basically was one of the things that tanked the Milestone 2.0 worse than a boat anchor. Now, even worse than this was Hudlin's reasoning for making the Big Bang, saying that the Q-Juice came from Curtis Metcalf, who eventually became Hardware. This was a continuity decision that basically threw off, again, more of the dynamics, because Kurt Metcalf was supposed to be like Milestone's Tony Stark, but instead of him being a guy who was angry about his company not giving him his due, which was, again, related to black men not being able to get their due at working in corporate America, what we get is this tied into conspiracy theories as related to the Q-Juice, which was better done by the Shadow Cabinet. That was a much better overall overreaching story arc. And what we got was Kurt Metcalf as Hardware basically going from being a guy on the run, turning him into a passport bro, and again, never really getting Curtis to actualize his potential like he did in the original Hardware series. And even worse than that is that we got other books that just really didn't work well, like the Blood Syndicate, which looked like a boy band or a bunch of soy boys. Now, he wanted to turn the Blood Syndicate into a group of heroes because he didn't like the idea of them being a gang. And that whole book basically wound up falling apart because they didn't really understand Holocaust. He put in a whole bunch of stuff in as related to the Holocaust character, making him a West Indian or a Jamaican or something like that, and then wanted to go out here and put all this voodoo in, and then this basically led to the emasculation of Icon, which basically was the jump the shark moment for the overall Milestone 2.0 universe, which culminated with the death of Holocaust at the hands of Tech 9 as related to Flashback, going into time again, more CW type storytelling. And basically the death of Holocaust was the death of Milestone 2.0, because without their main lead villain, which was Holocaust, you couldn't build anymore in the Milestone 2.0 universe. Again, major mistakes as related to the dynamics and the structure of the Milestone 2.0 universe. And sadly, what happened with Milestone 2.0 under Reginald Hudlin was Milestone missed the opportunity to reach a new audience of readers, and we wound up losing that opportunity to reach that new audience of readers because they got someone who wasn't a publishing professional who understood how to build these structures as related to building a universe of characters, didn't understand the how to make character transformation arcs work as related to the medium of comics, didn't understand how to develop characters, and further went on to exacerbate a major flaw of Milestone 1.0. And that major flaw of Milestone 1.0 was that the late great Dwayne McDuffie, he made great heroes in Hardware, Bloods, and Icon, Static, and even the Blood Syndicate, to a point when them being anti-heroes. But the big problem at Milestone was they never really focused on creating that group of villains that would be able to drive conflict. Because just like He-Man has Skeletor, and She-Ra has the Horde, and the Power Rangers have Rita Repulsa, you always need a good villain to do a superhero or action type story. You always need that bad guy because that bad guy, one, establishes the conflict, that bad guy drives the conflict, and that bad guy makes us care about the hero and is the obstacle that the hero has to overcome. And Milestone 2.0, yes, it launched stories with heroes, but again, did not focus on the villains. And again, when you're coming from an emotional perspective of a fan and not the objective perspective of a publisher or a seasoned writer, you don't really understand that you need to be able to focus on your villain, because your villain is the character that's going to drive the story. They're going to drive the story to make us care. They're going to drive the story to basically drive the conflict and show us the obstacles that the hero has to overcome. They are the person that provides the credible threat, and you need to start focusing on your rogues because, again, your rogues are going to do two things. You gotta have a rogue who's basically a jobber who showcases the hero's powers, and you also are going to have rogues who are going to establish as the feuds. Now, I know I'm taking phrases from pro wrestling, but pro wrestling and comics are a lot alike, and you need to have jobbers and you need to have guys who heels that they can feud with, because the feuds are what drive the story. They are the thing that allow the character to take on new challenges and overcome challenges, and those feuds basically are the cementing of their arch enemies and their rogues gallery. So you have to understand how those dynamics work before you go out here and start a publishing company. Unfortunately, with Milestone 2.0, they started off on a wrong foot because even though they did get the rights back from, as related to the late great Dwayne McDuffie's wife, they weren't able to profit because, again, Milestone 2.0, yes, you created an Earth M with the Milestone characters, but you didn't create a world people could care about, because what Reginald Hudlin did was focus on looking to try to pander to people instead of trying to sell them by having the confidence to believe in the stories. Because a writer like myself, I have to have the confidence to believe in the story in order to sell it to readers. I have to have the confidence to go out here and sell the story and let the story, just after I put it on the marketplace, make sure that it's strong and solid as related to its structure and form, and that it's a story that people can care about and people can get excited about, and make sure that the conflict is so well that it's just driving the story. That's what a writer has to do. And again, because there was no studying of the origins of the classic Milestone universe, the new one wasn't strong like the post-Crisis of Infinite Earths DC was. Post-Crisis of Infinite Earths DC had strong organic ties to the previous universe, and also allowed us to see the new beginnings of these characters, because editorial had that publishing background to understand how to make a universe work. I mean, you need the seasoned professionals who know what they're doing in publishing, but the sad part is Warner Brothers Discovery, they want to, again, cross over things, not understanding that you need a seasoned writer and seasoned publishers to know what they're doing, because that's how you set a course for all of these books. by saying, look, we're going to, after the origin, what are we going to do? And that was the big problem with Milestone 1.0 that hampered 2.0. After the origin, okay, who are the bad guys? Where are the arch enemies? Where's the credible threats? We need adversaries to challenge the characters so that we can build the world. We need adversaries that show how there are legitimate threats to the characters. That's one of the things I focused heavily on with the SJS Direct universe. As related to stories, I always look to try to make the bad guys into credible threats because I understand bad guys drive the story and bad guys make us care. And sadly, with Milestone 2.0, what's happened is that they had a missed opportunity to be able to reach a new generation of readers, especially black readers with these characters. They really missed out on the opportunity to reach those customers, missed out on that opportunity because Reginald Hudlin was running a company based on feelings and not thinking critically like a publisher. And that's basically how he basically ruined Milestone 2.0, because he didn't have that experience that Dwayne McDuffie did when he was alive. Dwayne McDuffie was not only a seasoned writer over at Marvel Comics who had experience in comics when he came to Milestone, but he also had that objective perspective as a publisher to look at the universe from a panoramic perspective, because when you're a professional publisher and a writer, you have to really look at the bigger picture. That's what I'm doing right now with a book I'm working on called Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. I have to take a look at the bigger picture of that story and see how all the elements work. I mean, you have to take a look at the big picture of your story before you go out here and post it up, because when you're emotional and you're involved in the story emotionally, you can't take that look at the story until later on. I mean, sometimes, again, when I'm writing, I have to put the story away and then take a look at it later on from that bigger picture. And from that bigger picture, I can really look at that book and see where that book is going and see where I need to take it. I mean, when you're in the trenches just writing the outline and writing the first draft, you're really in the book. But the whole thing is, once you start to pull away from the book, you start to see the bigger picture. And that's the perspective a publisher and a seasoned writer have as related to storytelling. That's the perspective that Milestone 2.0 needed that it didn't get. And as a result, what we have here is, again, a sad missed opportunity to take these great characters and share them with the next generation. Basically, Reginald Hudlin, in his emotions, wound up doing great damage, because instead of us being able to enjoy those Milestone characters and people being able to see how great they are, what we got was basically these books published in omnibuses and basically are going to be forgotten, possibly going to be forgotten as basically a failed attempt to relaunch these characters, a failed attempt because, again, nothing was done to really connect people to these characters, and they'll be seen as dated and old, worse than the Milestone 1.0 characters, because instead of making the Big Bang that general event it should have been, that should have been any sort of incident, what we're going to get is a dated incident tied to Black Lives Matter, and again, Black Lives Matter being seen as a historical fraud. Again, Milestone 2.0 basically was a great opportunity that was sadly missed because of the mismanagement of Reginald Hudlin and his arrogance as related to maintaining his direction for Milestone characters. Now, if you want to pick up my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, you can find that comic on Lulu for the same price as the 2022 Kickstarter by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try out my first digital comic, Esteem No Good Deed, you can get that comic on Kindle for 99 cents and on Amazon.com, along with the other books of the SJS Direct universe, such as the ISIS series, such as the Esteem series, such as the John Haynes series, such as books in the Spinsterella trilogy, my vampire novel Eternal Night, or my black sorority novel The Thetas. You can find all those SJS Direct universe books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to help me be able to make more comics or be able to review more comics, and by helping me be able to do that by dropping a donation to the PayPal or the Cash App, that'd be greatly appreciated. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available on Lulu, John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at lulu.com today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door takes on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed, all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess featuring a bonus pin-up and the other 2 books in the Cyber Goddess saga at online bookstores everywhere today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, E-Steam Horror of the Hyena Woman. Hell's aspiring angel takes on a wicked werewolf in this action-packed, all-new E-Steam series adventure. Get E-Steam Horror of the Hyena Woman in paperback and e-readers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.